Where does your favorite NFL team rank entering week 3 of the 2024 NFL season? What's going on, football fans? It's Mitch here, back with another NFL Power Rankings video. And in this video, I rank all 32 NFL teams from the worst to the best. If that sounds good, Gronk, spike the like button. Don't forget to subscribe for weekly NFL rankings just like this. And I use these rankings to inform my bets. This is how I truthfully believe your team sucks, your team's really good, your team's somewhere in between. This is what I actually think of your favorite team. Let me know in the comments what you actually think of my power rankings. Am I right? Am I wrong? Where am I right? Where am I wrong? Let's get started and let's rank the worst team in the NFL. I think everyone knows where I'm going with this one. It's pretty obviously the Carolina Panthers still. I know that they benched Bryce Young, which is absolutely wild. Like, can we talk about Bryce Young for a minute? Now, I thought that CJ Stroud was going to be the better quarterback coming out of that draft class pretty definitively, by the way. I was closer to having Anthony Richardson or Will Levis being ranked over Bryce Young than Bryce Young over CJ Stroud. That was definitely just me. But there were many who had Bryce Young as the best quarterback in that draft class. And some had it definitively. And now it just feels like I would love to see who actually ranks Stroud first. That might make a really good video, to be honest with you, because there are a lot of people that ranked Bryce Young number 1 in that draft class that are now ripping Bryce Young as the biggest bust we've ever seen in the NFL. Bigger than Jamarcus Russell. And that might actually be facts. I'm not going to lie. Like, Bryce Young might be the biggest bust of all time. When you factor in the trade, when you factor in they could have had Stroud and the trade would have been fine. They could have had Caleb Williams the year after, or they could have had their choice of Caleb Williams or Drake May or Jaden Daniels or whoever else they wanted, right? You factor all that in. You factor in the ownership, the coaching, just getting fired right away. Frank Reich in his first season, then having to replace him with a quarterback whisperer, not being able to fix him. Only 2 games into his second year, he's already being benched. This is catastrophic. Catastrophic for Carolina. Andy Dalton, the Red Rifle. I've always liked Andy Dalton. He's never been a great quarterback in the NFL, but I actually feel like, in his prime, at his peak, in this current state of the NFL, he would give you a chance to go pretty far in the playoffs. I'm not going to lie about that. I'd also say about Andy Dalton, the last couple of years when he's actually played, he's been pretty good. Like last year, when he played for Carolina, he was by far the most functional quarterback that they played. Like, he was easily the best player. He was easily better than Bryce Young. It wasn't even particularly close. So I actually would upgrade Carolina based on the benching of Bryce Young. He is that bad. He is maybe not even a backup in the league. He has no skill that you look at and you say, that is it. That's the trait that's going to carry our offense. We thought it might be intelligence. We thought it might be vision. We thought it might be creativity. It's not there. We thought it might be accuracy. It's not there. Right? Basically, he looks like a worse, smaller version of Tua right now. And that's not very good, if you know what I think of Tua. So, at number 32, it had to be said, Bryce Young, a bust. Carolina, terrible football team. They might be the worst team I've ever seen. They're on pace. So at number 32, the Panthers. At number 31, if it were not for the Carolina Panthers, we'd be talking about how catastrophic the New York Giants are. An absolute ginormous disaster in New York. The Giants are bad. And they could have beat the Commanders for sure. I think they probably should have beat the Commanders. Malik Neighbors looks like a great player. He looks like he's going to be a superstar. Wow, I'm shocked. And this is something I want to say. I know that they just started their careers. We're only 2 games in between Rome Odunze and Malik Neighbors. But for anybody that had Rome Odunze above Malik Neighbors, you were smoking something special. I don't know what you were smoking, okay? Like, it was clear if anybody watched the tape in college. Marvin Harrison Jr., Malik Neighbors, alpha number 1 receivers day 1 in the NFL. Everyone else, they might take a little time. But this guy has arrived. Now, the offensive line, I don't think it's really as bad as last year. Devin Singletary had a nice little game against Washington. But that's the worst defense in football. I think you could make a strong argument the Commanders are the worst defense in the league. And they still didn't win. Like, they still didn't look super great on offense. Daniel Jones clearly is just not a franchise quarterback. It's clear as day. And I kind of feel bad for Brian Daboll. I do. I honestly feel like he didn't pair himself up with the best general manager in the world. I will say that in Shane. Like, clearly made some bad decisions, including Saquon Barkley, who, you might think Saquon, just dropped the ball in that game against the Falcons, and maybe you thought he was overrated the last couple of years, whatever. But one thing I'll say about Saquon, he is a culture guy. Like, he's a heart and soul player. He loves football. To strip that away from your team and not believe in that guy, I think is crazy. And you've got your owner who wanted him. And your owner who's now crying every time he watches Saquon Barkley make a guy miss in the open field. And then the defense, I think, is a bigger issue for the Giants. Honestly, we didn't expect anything from the Giants offense, but you bring in Brian Burns, you make a big move on defense. And I've been saying all offseason, I think the secondary is putrid. And that's definitely lived up to the hype. But I also would say, the pass rush has not been there. They fired Wink Martindale, with no real substance to the firing, other than it felt like there was friction there. I don't really know. And Martindale, I think, is in Michigan now. And, they bring in the guy from Tennessee, who I didn't think was a bad coach. I actually like him. And he has done nothing with this defense. They didn't force any mistakes from a rookie quarterback. They barely got pressure. They barely really provided stops. The Commanders were driving the field and kicking field goals. And sure, they didn't score touchdowns, but it feels like this defense has gone backwards after adding Brian Burns to the front 7. That should not be the case. And they brought back Adoree Jackson to kind of solidify their corners a little bit before the season started. The Giants' defense is worse than last year. Their offense might be a little bit better because they don't have a catastrophic offensive line and they don't have an Italian guy just randomly playing quarterback off the street. But, number 31 is only because the Panthers are so bad. At number 30, the Washington Commanders. The Commanders are 30, and I feel pretty good about this one. The Commanders, I think, are going to get absolutely wasted on Monday Night Football by the Cincinnati Bengals. They are big underdogs for a reason. They're going to Cincinnati. Good luck, okay? The Bengals are desperate for a win. But also, the Commanders' defense, worst in football. They can't cover a soul. Not a soul, okay? They couldn't cover Wave God, Turtle, Durkant, John, Big Al. They might not even be able to cover Becca out there, okay? So, it's bad, all right? But I don't believe in the coaching staff either. I just want to let it be known that I was not a huge fan of the Dan Quinn hiring. It hasn't really proven me wrong yet. I felt like it was a very, safe hiring with no real, substance or flair to it. I felt like Dan Quinn, good defensive coordinator, but didn't really feel like a guy that should be a head coach again, right? He feels like he should be in the Spagnuolo category where, he's a good defensive coordinator or a Vic Fangio type, right? That he maybe bounces around team to team, but it feels like he's not a guy that's going to really be a head coach. And then Cliff Kingsbury to me is just like, yeah, does he look cool? He probably has good vibes. Sure. I think I would love the guy in person, but I don't think he's a good offensive coach. And Jaden Daniels, I don't think is going to be very good in the NFL. You know, there's people that are hyping him up because they ranked him high in the draft and they said, you know, he was great and all this stuff. But he takes too many sacks. He holds on the ball. And then every pass he throws is a screen. He's really hasn't like shown any capacity or capability to throw the ball over the middle with timing and precision. He played exactly like this in college. All he does is take off and run. And I don't know, man. He's just like not it for me. He's not what I look for at quarterback. He feels like more closer to like a Tyrod Taylor type, or like somebody that might be like a fringe backup, like Marcus Mariota, for example, where he's athletic, but like I don't think he really has the ability to be a good passer at the NFL level. So at number 30, the Commanders, I don't love really anything about this team right now, honestly. I think their defense sucks. I think the only reason they won is because the Giants are terrible. And they were at home, and Daniels could make a few more plays with his legs than Daniel Jones, and they ran the ball on the Giants. And Brian Robinson, I like Brian Robinson. I will say that. I like Brian Robinson. Zach Ertz somehow is still catching 5 passes a game. He's slower than me running backwards. I don't really understand it, but anyways, they're at number 30. At number 29, the Denver Broncos. The Broncos are a little bit higher than these teams, I would say, at the bottom of the list, just because you've got that Sean Payton factor. I also respect Vance Joseph. I think that he puts together good weekly game plans with somewhat limited talent, especially in the front seven. I think the Broncos could really bring it to the Bucs this week, and that will be something that we discuss at a further note on Wednesday and Thursday. But I look at the Broncos and I feel like they've pretty much met my standard for this season so far. Their offense just doesn't have enough skill, talent, or explosiveness, and Bo Nix is not any good. And that's pretty much what I expected, right? I've been saying all offseason the Broncos are going to be top 3 pick in the draft, and it's because they don't have either side of the ball that can carry their team to victories. Their defense isn't good enough to do that. Their offense clearly isn't good enough to do that, and they have a rookie. They played in Seattle, tough game. They probably should have got blown out, but they made it close and competitive at the end. The Steelers game, they played a team that can't score, so it was somewhat close, but they were never really in the game because the Steelers defense just completely dominated them. And honestly, their offense has been really bad. Like, Bo Nix has not been able to do anything, throwing the ball past the line of scrimmage. Their run game has been horrifically bad, so that's something that they need to solve. If they can get the ground game going a little bit more, I do think that can start to get this team into a direction where maybe they become like a savvy underdog that you're willing to back in bets. But I wouldn't feel good about this team winning more than like 4 games this year. So at number 29, the Denver Broncos. At number 28, the Indianapolis Colts. The Colts are bad. Now, I think they fooled us after week 1 because they played a good Texans team, a very good, very talented Texans team at home in a divisional game. And it was week 1. We weren't really sure what we were going to get from, the new pieces on defense, and then, of course, Anthony Richardson, and then Shane Steichen had all offseason to scheme up a revenge plot against the Texans. But when you really think about that game, you think about a game where they had a punt block that gave them a touchdown, basically. They converted their final touchdown on a 4th and 3 from the 3-yard line where Anthony Richardson ran over 2 people to get into the end zone. They threw 2 bombs for touchdowns. They really didn't move the ball. They had very little consistency, even on the ground running the ball. And coming into the year, I thought they would be bad. I actually had them last in their division, but I didn't think that they would be this bad. I thought that their run defense would be much better than this. I thought the areas they could hang their hat on, like the identity of the team, would be run game on offense and run defense. And I think they need to get Anthony Richardson more involved as a runner. I think that could help unlock more explosive plays and at least give them an identity. I think they definitely need to just commit to running the ball more because Richardson is just not good enough right now. He can't throw the ball with any consistency. You need to be, I think the screen game needs to get going. Like, you need to find as simple of completions as possible. Build that confidence up, get some yak plays in the offense. Like, I think Shane Steichen is too focused on creating big plays and making Anthony Richardson work. And I think he needs to treat Richardson like he's Justin Fields right now and just like manufacture every throw for him, right? So that I think is a problem. They can't have above a 50% completion. Their defense can't stop the run. I mean, my goodness, you're playing Malik Willis, and I understand the Packers can run the ball, and Matt LaFleur's a savvy coach, and they have a great running scheme, but that's pathetic. You've got to be able to stop the run against Malik Willis. You want to force Malik Willis to throw, and their defense is entirely too simplistic on the back end. They're not very talented on the back end of their defense, and they don't blitz, so they don't really get after quarterbacks like that. So for me, the Colts are at number 28. At number 27, the Miami Dolphins. Back at the bottom of the league, baby. But I will say, I always get after Dolphins fans. And some of you guys still follow me, and I give you credit for that. I don't know why Durcan is still with me. But anyways, we've got the Dolphins at 27. And I try to warn you like every year. But you guys get excited about this phony quarterback in Tua Tagovailoa, who's a smoke and mirrors scheme quarterback. That's all he is, right? And then you have an offensive line that couldn't block a soul. I mean, they couldn't block Monty if they wanted to. And then their defense couldn't stop James Cook from running the ball. Can't stop Josh Allen ever. Okay? They get bullied, dominated, and daddied up by the Buffalo Bills every single year. And they just get out-physicaled, they get beat up, they get ran over, and they've got a bunch of old dudes. Jordan Poyer looks slow out there. They got too many old dudes. Jalen Ramsey's washed. He can't cover me. I mean, this team sucks, bro. This team is a clown show. Mike McDaniel, bro, what are you doing? I mean, the offensive play calling in that game against Buffalo, they made Jonnu Smith the featured weapon. You've got Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill making $300 million, I think, something like that. I'm exaggerating, but probably. You've got like 18 running backs that run a 4-2-4, and you've got, I don't know, like anything other than Jonnu Smith as the main weapon. I mean, come on. And Tua, I mean, the one interception was so bad. I feel bad for the guy because he has brain trauma and brain injuries, and that's not good ever, and I wish him well for his health and his life down the road. But the fact of the matter is, being 100% honest, he needs to protect himself. He should know to not like try to run people over, even DeMar Hamlin. He should not do that, and he still does it. He thinks he's Josh Allen, and he gets lit up, and he gets knocked out of the game. Like, you took the jiu-jitsu for a reason, bro. Did you not? And then the O-line, like, every run is left and right. They can't run straight because they don't get any push. Like, teams have just figured them out. The Bills just collapse in the middle of the field. They just suffocate zones to the middle of the field. They force Tua to throw his 18-second, 10-yard out route because the ball flies in the air forever. And the defense is just not that good. Like, I don't know what to say about the defense. They're just not that good, honestly. And I don't know. Like, 27, Miami. And this is because they're going to have rather Snoop Huntley or Skylar Thompson at quarterback for the next, 4 weeks. So this is obviously an adjustment without Tua. With Tua, they're obviously not 27. They're 15 or something like that, or 16. But Miami, when you really look at how they've played so far this year, they should have lost to Jacksonville, a team that just lost to Cleveland, who got annihilated by the Cowboys, and then the Cowboys got annihilated by the Saints. So you really do that math. And then you think about, okay, they got annihilated by Buffalo, who barely beat the Cardinals. Now, maybe the Cardinals are pretty good, but just saying, right? Miami might not even with Tua be top 16 in the league. So at number 27, Miami. At number 26, I got the Green Bay Packers. I moved them up. I think they're going to come back down to earth this week with Malik Willis because I think Tennessee will do a better job than the Colts did of stopping the run and forcing Malik Willis to actually participate in a football game, which is how you properly coach football games there, Shane Steichen and Gus Bradley. But the Packers, I really like as a team once they get Jordan Love back, but this is obviously just an adjustment for Malik Willis, who I think is truthfully a third-string quarterback. I do think Malik Willis is like a Skylar Thompson type of court. Like, he is not good, okay? Their receivers just don't participate in the game with him out there. Josh Jacobs is a dog. They've got a good offensive line. And I will say the biggest movement for me is that Green Bay's defense played really well. And that's huge, right? Like, week one, maybe the Eagles' offense is just really that good. Like, they are really good when A.J. Brown's out there. They can run the ball on anybody. And Hurts really was catastrophic in that game, too. And their pass defense in Green Bay played well there. So maybe it's just a matter of they got little out-physicaled, out-toughness. Saquon brought it to them. But maybe that was a bad matchup from that standpoint. So we have to readjust our thoughts on the Packers defense maybe a little bit, but the offense clearly won't be the same until Love is out there, which they're going to have to win through defense. So at number 26, I have the Packers. Number 25, the Tennessee Titans. The Titans could be 2-0, but Will Levis sucks. Like, anybody that thinks Will Levis right now should be starting for the Tennessee Titans is probably like really, really biased or like snorting something. I don't know. But like, he's costing them games. I understand that he's like good in terms of the deep ball, the explosiveness. I like those aspects of his game. Even as a runner, I think he's physical and tough, but he's too erratic and he makes too many mistakes. The offensive line, inconsistent. Every other aspect of the team, I think, is playoff worthy. The receiving core, Calvin Ridley showed up in a big way, even against the Jets, right? Like, Tony Pollard's looked fantastic. Okonkwo's made plays. D-Hop's not 100%. The defense has played really, really well so far. Like, the secondary's lived up to the hype. They, faced an elite running back duo in New York. Like, I think the Titans have done enough against the Jets and the Bears to be 2-0. And it's just the quarterback and a little bit the offensive line hasn't been good enough. But, man, it's just one of those teams at number 25. At number 24, the Chicago Bears. The Bears are sort of similar to Tennessee, right? They had a game against Tennessee where they should have lost. And then I felt like against Houston, they should have lost by like 30, right? If Cam Akers doesn't fumble, I feel like we're talking about this team in even a lesser degree. It looked close in the end because Chicago had a chance at the end there, and they only ended up losing by 6 somehow, but they probably should have lost by a lot more. The reffing in that Sunday Night Football game was really, really bad, and Caleb Williams continues to look not like what I thought he would look like, but it is kind of in line with how I evaluated him coming out of college. I didn't have him as my number 1 quarterback. I had him as my number 2. And the concerns, I think, are all coming to the forefront. And I think too many people are blaming the offensive line in Chicago. Because entering the year, I think a lot of people were higher on the offensive line in Chicago than they want to talk about now, right? Everyone's blaming that offensive line right now. And I don't think that's the only reason Caleb is struggling. I think Caleb's deep ball clearly is not it. He can't hit the deep ball. He misses constantly. There's little things in terms of timing on routes, throws, back shoulder throws, little things where he's late quite often. I think that he too often tries to play backyard football and tries to, juke and jive around and just freely throw the football with no timing or precision. And those are things that don't transfer to the NFL level particularly well. It's almost like Johnny Manziel-ish, if you understand what I'm saying. But Caleb is a much better athlete than Johnny Manziel, like in terms of NFL athlete. He's stronger, he's quicker, he's faster, right? He's got a stronger arm. all those things. But he's almost like he's playing like Johnny Manziel, where it's like, I don't know what the playbook is. I'm just running around in circles and throwing the ball. So, and that doesn't work in the NFL that well. And I think too many quarterbacks, just to go on a tangent, are playing that style, which is why points are down and which is why passing is down and quarterbacks suck. But that's a side tangent. I think DJ Moore looks frustrated, which is not a good sign. Rome Odunze does not look great. And Keenan Allen's already hurt. Who would have thought? The offensive line has been bad against the blitz. They need to figure out their coordination of picking up blitzes, and their offensive line has not allowed them to run the ball. Neither has DeAndre Swift. Khalil Herbert needs to get more touches on the ground because Swift has not been a productive runner for them. His vision is not it. And defensively, I think they've been very strong. I will say very strong. Pretty much the only reason they're at 24 and not 29 is because their defense is good. And I think they have played the Texans and Tennessee, who I both think have pretty good defenses. So I feel like their offense against a team like the Colts should be a bit better. So I have the Bears at number 24. Okay, next up. At number 23, the Los Angeles Rams, which might be a little bit shocking to people. I don't know where the Rams fans have gone that blame me for, putting them at 11 before the season. And when I said they weren't going to make the playoffs and when I constantly responded that they wouldn't win this division, they were irate. They couldn't understand it. They thought they were going to the Super Bowl, all this stuff. The Rams are already done. That's what it feels like to me. I have respect for McVay and Stafford, and I do believe Puka and Kupp will be back at some point, which is why I only have them at 23 and not 31. But right now, this team is catastrophic in terms of injury and in terms of depth. Their defense is who we thought they were in week 2. Week 1, they played well. They had a good game plan. I thought they executed, and they did their thing against the Lions. I thought they played well until the end. They got gassed. They got ran over in the overtime period, but that was to be expected against Detroit, their offensive line in that running game, right? Week 2, they looked slow, unathletic. They were constantly, not being able to figure out the scramble drill against Kyler Murray. And Marvin Harrison Jr. had a day. Trey McBride had a day. James Conner did whatever he wanted. They just had no resistance to the Cardinals' offense. Offensively, everything was a short pass. They couldn't run the ball with Kyren or anyone else. And Stafford really had no time at all because their offensive line is terrible. And Cooper Kupp got hurt. Wow, didn't see that coming. Who would have thought, right? Not me. But at number 23, I got the Rams because I think they're going to get absolutely lambasted by the Niners this week. And that's not even a healthy Niners team, but I just don't think they can block anyone right now. And I am actually worried for Stafford's health. So at number 23, I got the Rams. The only reason they're this high is because at least they have a quarterback and a coach. So that's why they're at number 23. At number 22, I've got the New England Patriots. We're starting to talk about actual professional football teams now at this point. The Patriots are a professional football team. I will say that. That's a positive. They could be 2-0. They very easily could be 2-0, actually. If they don't get their field goal blocked and Jacoby Brissett doesn't take a stupid sack, which actually moves the field goal back for Joey Sly, they probably win that game in regulation because I don't think the Seahawks drive all the way down the field and, win the game with a touchdown. They probably just are able to get that field goal that sent this game to overtime, right? So, to me, I think New England has exceeded expectations greatly. Their run offense is far better than last year, and I actually think they have one of the best rushing offenses in football right now. I would argue it's top 5 in the league. I think their run game is playing really well in that regard in terms of run blocking. I think Stevenson and Gibson have both had great moments, and I think that their usage of tight ends has been successful. Hunter Henry was great this past week. Austin Hooper showed up in week 1. I want to see more downfield passing. I want to see them push the ball down the field off of play action. That's the next step for this offense. Jacoby's done a good job navigating the pocket, navigating a bad pass protection unit up front, and actually not making mistakes. And I appreciate that about Jacoby so far. But he is not making a lot of plus plays. He's not making a lot of plus throws. He's not making a lot of tight window throws. There are guys open. It's not just the receivers. And Jacoby is not making those plays. And I continue to say it, they're playing their second best quarterback. And that's a problem. But this is not a team that even really wants to win, and they nearly beat 2 good teams. They beat the Bengals in their house in week 1. No matter how lacking preparation the Bengals were, they still did it. And in week 2, they should have beat Seattle, a team that I also think is pretty good. But the difference in that game, I think, was Geno Smith versus Jacoby Brissett. Defensively, I was disappointed in the Patriots last week. I thought they did a good job against the run. Jawan Bentley goes down. That hurts a lot, right? They already lost Barmore for the season. Judon got traded. Like, they're losing big-time pieces for this defense. Top 30 players at their positions at 3 positions in the front 7. But the great thing about the Patriots defense is how much depth they have. So I think they'll be able to come up and rise up just as they did last year. Now, that being said, I think this team should trade for a left tackle. That might be a hot take. I think they should trade for a left tackle, sign a veteran left tackle, something. Because their left tackle position is actually holding them back from being 2-0 and actually being an interesting, like, savvy football team this year where they're, like, relevant. I actually think. Maybe I'm crazy, but their defense is keeping them in it. I think they're being underrated right now. I actually, really respect it. I didn't think I'd be saying this after 2 weeks. I was fearing the opposite, but the Patriots are playing well, like, honestly. So at number 22, New England. At number 21, the Las Vegas Raiders, who are very much like the Patriots. I think that their defense is slightly worse than New England, but their offense has more talent. And I think Minshew is just more bold than Jacoby Brissett. Like, I think he has more testicles. He's willing to throw the ball down the field a little bit more. Obviously, they have a left tackle. We don't. But you look at the Raiders, and I think that Pierce definitely adjusted from the critique of week 1, where we said he was too conservative. And I think that he's a guy that he needs to be booted in the butt, like, on a weekly basis to make the right decisions. And they have Marvin Lewis there. There's no reason that they should be, not well coordinated on the sidelines in terms of having the right decisions on a game day basis, because they've got a professional coach in there who's been there, who's done that, and should be able to steer Pierce in the right direction. That's why you have an assistant head coach that's been there and done that, right? Defensively, I think they've got one of the most underrated defensive coordinators in football. I think that their front is pretty good, and Kuntz isn't out there right now, but Crosby and Wilkins are playing great, and Crosby played a phenomenal game against Lamar as expected against a weak offensive line. Their secondary's got some underrated pieces like Jack Jones and Nate Hobbs. I think their linebackers are also underrated, led by Spillane, who had a big interception last week. I think it was him who had the interception on the tip ball. And for them to be able to come back, I think that just speaks to their mentality, their belief. Devontae Adams, stud still. Brock Bowers, he is a stud, quickly becoming an elite tight end in this league. And Jacoby Myers makes a couple plays every game as well. So they need to find a better way to run the ball. They need to continue to believe in their style of football. They can't constantly be getting into these games where the other team's scoring 20 plus. Ideally, the other team's scoring, 17, 20 to 23 points, and they have a chance in every game, because I think with Devontae Adams and Brock Bowers, they're going to string together a couple of drives every game. Minshew's good enough, man. Like, Minshew right now, like, people want to really, like, get after him and, like, say he's not good, but if we're truthfully talking about the NFL quarterbacks right now, Gardner Minshew is probably like the 23rd best quarterback in the league. He's not like 32 or 31 or 30. Like, he's probably, and they're closer to 20 than people think. So at number 21, the Raiders. At number 20, the Jacksonville Jags. Jacksonville has been really confusing these first 2 weeks. They should have beat Miami in week 1. ETN fumbles, really goes downhill. Doug Peterson makes stupid 4th down decisions. And then, like, they lose to the Browns, which I thought that was a lock, man. They're at home opener. They're playing Deshaun Watson, who sucks. The offensive line for Cleveland's injured. They should be able to get pressure. And then offensively, they just can't string together enough drives. Like, every time they had a chance, the drive would just instantly end. They get instantly sacked for a safety. Like, again, I'm going to continue to say it until Jacksonville fans believe me. Trevor Lawrence is not good. Like, I'm done with this guy. He's not good. You need to be able to elevate the receivers, the offensive line, the scheme around you. He does none of it. He doesn't do anything at a high level. He's talented physically, but so is Daniel Jones. Like, the bro looks like AFC Daniel Jones, to credit Kevin Durkin out there. I don't think he's quite as bad, but, like, really, He's slow-minded, and his arm is slow. His release is slow, and he's not really working pressure well. Like, I don't know, man. Trevor Lawrence looks like a huge bust on that contract. Not a bust outright, but a bust on the contract. The O-line is shit, like really bad too. And like they can't block good D-lines. Anytime they play a good D-line, they're in trouble. They play a good D-line this week in Buffalo on primetime. Good luck. Their defense, I think they're good against the run mostly, but they got ran on by Cleveland pretty well. And their secondary is hit and miss. I like their linebackers. I like their D-line, and I like Nielsen. But I think their offense is extremely underwhelming. Even if you just look at like the results of the opposing offenses they've played, take those results, take the amount of points that those teams have scored. They should be 2-0 if you came into the season projecting them to score 24 points a game. They should be 2-0. But their offense has been extremely underwhelming. So at number 20, I have the Jags, and honestly, this might be too high. I don't even know. They might be worse than the Patriots. At number 19, the Cleveland Browns. The thing about Cleveland is their defense is still really awesome. If Deshaun Watson plays mistake-free football, their offensive line gets healthier, Nick Chubb comes back later in the year, they have a formula to stay in games and upset teams and win games no matter the location. Defense, run the football, protect the ball. But Watson is so bad that there's going to be games where he just costs them the game. He can't make a throw. He's off rhythm. He turns it over. I will give Watson credit. That was one of the better games I've seen him play in the last 2 years. I will give him credit. And it wasn't a particularly amazing game by the standards of most quarterbacks, but for him, I thought it was good enough, right? Defensively, their D-line's really good. Their secondary's awesome. We know what they are. So that's why they're in the top 20, because they've got two good coaches, Stefanski, Schwartz. Their defense is really good. They can run the ball, and that's really it. But it doesn't feel like they have the ceiling that maybe we projected for them. At number 18, the Los Angeles Chargers. The Chargers are weird because like people are hyping them up now. Like they were hyping them up in the offseason, Mitch. And then in the regular season now, I see people ranking them in the top 10. Like that is wild. The Chargers have beaten the Carolina Panthers and the Raiders, two teams that people projected to win like 5 and 2 games. So, yeah, the Chargers, why did they win those games? It's pretty obvious. They have a better quarterback and they have a better coach than both of those teams by a quite wide margin. But now they play a team like Pittsburgh, in Pittsburgh, who has a dominant defense. This is actually kind of a better matchup for them than, some of the other teams they'll face, because at least they have good tackles. So they should be able to block them better than most teams. And they do have the better quarterback still, because you're taking on Justin Fields here. But this is a huge step up for the Chargers. They're playing an elite unit on the Steelers defense, and they're playing a team that's 2-0 and mistake-free football with a great coach. So at least the Steelers have things that will challenge the Chargers. The Chargers have not been challenged so far. The Raiders did, but they kind of lost the game. The Raiders turned it over 3 times, missed a field goal. There are things why the Chargers won that game, right? But the Chargers have things about them that you like. Herbert still hasn't played amazing, but their tackles are good. Herbert's good. Dobbins is playing really well. They're running the ball well, and they've got good edge rushers to close the game out. So that's what I like about the Chargers. They've got fundamental areas that make them a top 20 team, but I still feel like we have yet to see them play like above average talent on the other side, and I think that's where they're going to come back down to earth. So at number 18, the Chargers. At number 17, the New York Jets. The Jets are being overrated right now because overall I have not been impressed with this team, but there's enough to be excited in terms of if you're a Jets fan, I would be excited just because it's better than what I've seen in recent years. Rodgers is better than Zach Wilson by a long shot. Their O-line is the best it's been in years. They have an exciting running back and a second exciting running back in Allen. Garrett Wilson, The defense is a little bit better in week 2, right? They did enough there to force some mistakes. And they did what it took to win. But honestly, should they be favored 6.5 even at home on a short week against the Patriots? I'm not sure if they're that good. So Thursday's a chance for them to prove if they really just had a bad matchup in week 1 and played an elite team in San Francisco, or if they're really just a mid team. Because right now, I feel like they're mid. They don't have great coaching on either side. Their defensive line is thin. Their linebacking core feels thin. Their secondary's got some little injuries like DJ Reed. Their offense is just average, right? So if their defense isn't dominant, isn't great, isn't even good, it's good, I would say, but week 1 it wasn't, but it was good to very good against Tennessee. That's what we expect. But if it's not going to be dominant, I don't know if this team is a playoff team, because there's teams like the Steelers who are getting dominant defense. There's teams like Cleveland who will get dominant defense, right? There's even a team like New England who it feels like, yeah, they don't have the quarterback like Aaron Rodgers, but I mean, you look at Rodgers' production so far, it's not much better than Jacoby Brissett. And New England's running game has been very good. And New England's defense so far feels more well-rounded than the Jets. So I feel like it's interesting, but at number 17, the Jets. At number 16, the Atlanta Falcons. I have them right in the middle. I like what I saw from Kirk in week 2. He looked more comfortable in the offense. He looked more comfortable moving around a little bit more subtly in the pocket. I thought the O-line, played closer to what I expected. And, obviously the Steelers are tough to block, so it is what it is, right? But the Falcons, it's not too shocking they lost a defensive game to the Steelers. But they did bounce back. And they probably should have lost to the Eagles. But they showed some real prowess in terms of their ability to come back, execute situational football, and put themselves in positions to win, right? And they took advantage of an Eagles team that made some mistakes. And they did it on the road in a primetime spot. That's difficult to do, especially in the link with those fans and that offense on the other side of the Eagles. Even without A.J. Brown, they're tough to stop on the ground. Overall, Jesse Bates, incredible. Matt Judon, I thought, played well in week 2. I think that their linebackers played really well. I will say that, Ellis played well. Anderson was not great. Overall, they limited Devontae Smith enough. They limited Dallas Goedert enough, right? It was really just Saquon in the running game that was hurting them. And then offensively, Bijan looked great. They need to continue to give that ball to that man. Drake London played much better, looked much better. At this point, I'm willing to chalk up Kyle Pitts as a bust. I'm not going to lie. Darnell Mooney and Ray McLeod are making enough plays. I think that if they can get more out of Bijan as a receiver, find more creative ways to get the ball to Pitts, get the ball to Mooney, I don't think you can entirely expect Drake London to just be putting up 100 yards in every game, because I don't think he's quite that good. He's more of a number 1 receiver, but not a dominant alpha target. But a great route at the end to get them the win. And Cousins looked like Cousins, which I think is the biggest point you can bring from this game and really take from this game, is at least Cousins looked like Cousins. He was throwing the ball well, accurately, on time. He wasn't scared of the rush. There's certain things about it that you like. So at number 16, the Falcons. At number 15, the Arizona Cardinals, a team that looked dynamic, a team that looked absolutely just almost crazy in a way. The offense was so much fun to watch against the Rams. Kyler running around in circles, doing his thing, doing his Roadrunner impression. Trey McBride looking like the guy we thought he was. Marvin Harrison Jr. showing up in a big way, having a Randy Moss stat line. The O-line running the football, just showing that balance, showing the play action game from Kyler Murray, the deep ball from Kyler Murray, the scrambling ability from Kyler Murray, the MVP ceiling that everybody's talked about for Kyler Murray for years. MVP ceiling. Those type of performances still exist from Kyler, which is great, which makes them a threat for a wild card spot, in my opinion. Now, I don't think the defense is as good as it showed in week 2, but it's probably not as bad as it showed in week 1 against Buffalo. It's probably somewhere in between. I do think they're still going to struggle to stop the run against good offensive lines and good running games. I still think they're going to struggle to get pressure against good offensive lines, but they took advantage of a weak Rams offense with very little targets. They suffocated the underneath game. They tackled well. They got after Stafford. They got sacks. They got pressures. They forced, throwaways, things like that, right? So Gardeck played great. Budda Baker tackled well. They looked fast out there on defense, right? And that's exactly how you complement this offense. You be chaotic. You blitz. You get after it. You create a big play to get the ball to Kyler to win that shootout. And this is the type of game that the Cardinals will play at their peak, where they just can't be stopped on offense. Kyler's in the zone, and their defense is just carrying that momentum and feeding off of it. So at number 15, the Cardinals. At number 14, the Pittsburgh Steelers. Almost the opposite of the Cardinals in a way. Like the Cardinals are like the offensive shootout with a bad defense that's opportunistic. The Steelers are the elite defense with an offense that's kind of anemic, but given the right game script, they can play well. You know what I mean? So they're like opposites, but given the Steelers' track record, given Mike Tomlin, given, that I do think this is the best defense in football, I would say. That's why I have them above the Cardinals, right? So Fields, I think, has done well enough. He's made some big throws down the field. George Pickens is legit. Their O-line has not been a big worry for me. Now, they're going to be tested against Joey Bosa and Khalil Mack in a way that they weren't against Denver or Atlanta in terms of edge rush and pass rush in general. But their defense is awesome. They can get after any quarterback. They can cause mistakes. Their secondary is playing really well with Elliott and Fitzpatrick in the back end, Porter in the back end, even Dante Jackson to a certain degree. Pat Queen is making them faster in the middle. Like, their defense is phenomenal. Their offense, they need to, I think, just be a little bit more precise in the passing game. Najee and the run game, I expected to be a bit better through these first 2 weeks. They've been running the ball a lot, but I wouldn't say it's been particularly fantastic. So I think they need to get, a little bit more of a screen game going, a little bit more trickery, a little bit more smoke and mirrors from Arthur Smith. Get that stuff going because you can afford it a little bit with the defense that you have. Like, let's try to manufacture some offense. Let's get Justin Fields running the ball more. Like, things like that. At number 14, the Steelers. At number 13, the Dallas Cowboys. The Cowboys in week 2 looked closer to the team that I thought they would be this season. Now, I'm not saying I thought they would be this bad, but what I'm trying to say is they had the deficiencies that I thought would show up this year. Their secondary is thin, and it's kind of slow, right? Their defense is kind of weak against the run, and they can be overpowered. Their offensive line is not very good in pass protection. They can't run the ball. Their running backs suck. Those were all things that I thought would show up in their worst games, and that's what we saw. We saw a game script where the Saints got ahead, and they were able to run the ball, stay balanced, feature play action, rush the quarterback, kind of basically make Dallas one-dimensional, and that's how you have to play Dallas. You have to treat Dallas like the Packers treated them in that playoff game, like the Niners play them every time they play them. Get ahead, rush Dak, take the running game away from the game script, right? Because Dallas is not the most elaborate passing attack. They're very simplistic. A lot of it relies on talent and Dak Prescott to make the right throws. And if you know where the ball is going and you can consistently get a pass rush against a weak left tackle and a weak center and rookies, and then on defense, you can keep them off balance and their speed off balance with misdirection, with play action, with extra guys in the block. You expose the speed on the back end, you can get after them. So Dallas is definitely exposable. I think that we maybe overrated their performance against Cleveland because it was a perfect storm. They got ahead. They had special teams performance. They played a terrible quarterback. They played a bad offensive line. There was a lot of things that went well for their defense. It was a perfect matchup in a lot of ways. That was not. At number 12, the Seattle Seahawks, who I did have ahead of the Cowboys making the playoffs before the year. And after 2 weeks, I feel better about it now. 1 week, I wasn't so confident. But Seattle, they end up surviving against the Patriots. It feels like Seattle would have lost that game over the last 2 years with Pete Carroll. They win that game with Mike McDonald. They block a field goal in a crucial situation. And I really loved particularly what I saw from Ryan Grubb in the offense. That's a good Patriots secondary. That's a good Patriots defense. I thought Geno Smith was precise, accurate. He threw some money footballs out there, at the intermediate level, especially wide, outside the numbers, especially. JSN was phenomenal. Best I've seen him as an NFL pro. DK Metcalf, had that one broken coverage, but he also made a lot of plays. They didn't have Kenneth Walker in the game, right? Lockett was quiet, but he drew a couple PIs that were kind of BS. But he drew the PIs nonetheless, right? Geno attempted a lot of passes. That was the game script, a lot of short passes. If New England's going to give us the underneath and soft zone, we're going to go a lot of short passes. And it was successful for the points and the drives when they needed them, right? On the other side, I wasn't super impressed with Seattle's defense. I thought they gave up too much in the running game to Stevenson and Gibson, not what I expected. And I felt like Brissett did have some success, actually more against Seattle than he did against Cleveland. I don't really know why, though. I think they struggled with Hunter Henry early. They struggled with that individual matchup. I think Henry had like 10 catches or something crazy. And they struggled with a little bit of the boot play action stuff and like the run heavy script. So I'm looking for this defense to get better as the season goes on with Mike McDonald, but it's not quite to the level that I want it to be at. Meanwhile, the offense, I see where it's going, but I'm still concerned about the offensive line. So I think this is a good team, but not a great team. I feel pretty good. They've met expectations after 2 weeks. At number 11, a team that has exceeded expectations through 2 weeks is the Minnesota Vikings. They're nearly in the top 10 for me, and a lot of it has to do with Kevin O'Connell and Brian Flores are fantastic. Their defense is top 10 in football, if not right now playing like a top 5 defense. Very quietly, who would have thought Stephon Gilmore is still good at football, right? We've been saying on BLV, Andrew Van Ginkel is really good at football. And that's come to the, the table here. Then Blake Cashman, he's pretty athletic. That's happened as well. I think this is like the most underrated defense in football. They play so chaotic. They play so uncalculated in a way, like so diverse. And it's very hard for the Niners, a team that's so precise and a team that's so detailed and a team that's so angle-oriented. Brian Flores plays such a chaotic style and such a unconventional style that it's actually harder for the Niners to calculate what's going to take place. And a guy like Brock Purdy, who relies so much on anticipation and knowing where a guy's going to be, it confuses him and it rattles him and it makes him unsure of himself, which is what we saw. That's why the Vikings won, because Sam Darnold was sure of himself and Brock Purdy was not. And Purdy had mistakes, sacks, a bad interception, a horrible interception. And, like no McCaffrey, that obviously helps. But the Vikings were able to persevere through no Jordan Addison, no TJ Hawkinson, no Justin Jefferson. Like, that's what makes me think this team is legit. Now, do they have the Niners number? Is that a good matchup for them seemingly? Yeah, it is. From a coaching standpoint, from a player standpoint, it feels like it's a good matchup from them, because they can at least do a good enough job against the Niners run game to make Purdy uncomfortable, blitz Purdy, get after their protections, expose the weaknesses, the very few small weaknesses on this amazing Niners roster. And, their offense, Kevin O'Connell does a great job of scheming up against that defensive scheme. So I feel like that was a great matchup. Styles make fights. It's a great matchup. Now they're going to go against a team that's a lot like the Niners in similar ways, but they have an alpha stud quarterback and way better receivers. So that's where you talk about, okay, the difference might be where Purdy made a mistake, Stroud might make the Vikings pay in their unconventional, chaotic fashion. So we'll see how the Vikings match up. This one's also at home, which really does help because the Vikings are great at home. But I'm starting to believe that the Vikings, if they can get healthier, that they can be a wild card team because I think they have the makings of it if this defense continues to play this way. Entering the top 10. At number 10, the Philadelphia Eagles. The Eagles, I thought, blew it against the Falcons, and that's why at 1-1, I still have them at number 10. Are they flawed, particularly drop back passing game, defensively? Yes. But their run game is so good. They control teams. They have great skill talent. A.J. Brown didn't play. I love the addition of Saquon to this team so far, despite the drop. And honestly, that was not the right call. They should have ran the ball. They should have. I'm not a Sirianni guy, but I do think Kellen Moore's helped this team. Defensively, way too soft. They prevented themselves from winning the game against the Falcons. Way too soft. I think they need to blitz a little bit more. I think they need to dabble with some blitzes because their pass rush has not been as effective as we would have thought. Their run defense is still underwhelming in my opinion. Linebackers, safeties look slow. And Darius Slay is not the same player he used to be. So they have flaws all over the defense. I think they need to be a little bit more aggressive and complement their offense. Because I think they can control the clock and really wear down teams pretty often. And if they can create a little bit more havoc, couple turnovers every game, couple big sacks every game, that would really change, I think, the way that I think of this team. That's just my opinion, though. At number 10, the Eagles. Hurts is still, to me, not playing great. He looked better as a runner. He looked better as an athlete. A.J. Brown was missed. They need more out of guys like Dotson. They need more out of their secondary options. Too much falls on Brown, and then if Brown's not there, it's Smith, and really they're not getting enough from other guys. But man, they blew that game. And they beat a team that I thought was pretty promising entering the season, the Packers, in week 1. So I got to give them that credit. At number 10, I have the Eagles. At number 9, the Baltimore Ravens, a team that's pretty similar to the Eagles so far this year in terms of results. They blew a game against the Raiders against a team that they were favored against and should have won at home. Both same thing. But the Ravens did play the Chiefs, and they played them to the end. Now, I thought that game gave them too much credit, and I really discussed that last week. But I also gave them credit for staying in that game because it's the champs, it's the Chiefs, it's in Arrowhead, it's the first game of the season, all that stuff. Gave them credit for that. But if you would have asked me last week, doing these power rankings last week, if I would have been shocked that the Ravens would be sitting here at 0-2, I'd honestly say no, because the Ravens showed a lot of deficiencies in week 1. Middle of the field coverage. We saw that with Brock Bowers. The ability to get thrown on in a way to the number 1 receivers. We saw that with Rashee Rice. We've seen that with Devontae Adams. Right? Like, their run defense has been really good. I think their rush offense has been solid, but maybe not as good as expected. Lamar didn't play great against the Raiders. He played really well against the Chiefs, in terms of his rushing and things like that. But as a passer, he was rather limited. Flowers got back on track in week 2. Andrews a little bit more so. But I really feel like Likely cannot be a guy that does not get featured. He needs to be featured like Zay Flowers is in the offense. It can't just be we run plays. We need to feature players. We need to get our playmakers the ball, and Likely is one of them. You can't treat him like he's just a secondary piece anymore. The offensive line is clearly flawed, though, and we saw that in big spots against Max Crosby. And you just can't allow Minshew to come back on your team. If you're a legitimate team, you can't allow Gardner Minshew to drive down the field, go 30 for 38 or whatever he did in your home building, and you think I'm going to rank you in an elite manner? Absolutely not. So that's the bottom line. It's not even like the Raiders ran the ball well. They didn't. I think the most impressive part of the Ravens so far has been their run defense. Everywhere else has been pretty mediocre to bad. So this is a team without an identity right now, but they've got enough talent. They've got a great quarterback. They've got a proven coach to the level where they're still top 10, but they're looking like they're going to maybe fall off and miss the playoffs if they don't turn this around quickly. So at number 9, the Ravens. At number 8, the Cincinnati Bengals, which might be bold for me to rank an 0-2 team at 9-8, and especially the Bengals because they lost the Patriots. But hey, the Ravens lost the Raiders, so there it is. But also, the Bengals, I just feel like this team's going to turn it around. I just have confidence. I feel like they should have beat the Chiefs, like 100%. Honestly, like, if that Joe Burrow fumble doesn't happen, they probably win. It's that simple. It's that simple. Now, obviously, that's what happens in football. People fumble. People turn it over. But I thought their defense showed up. Like, what I was talking about their defense in terms of the Patriots game. Like, they were weak against the run, but they were great against the pass. And honestly, they played better against the Chiefs on defense than they did against the Patriots. If I'm being 100% honest, the Patriots did a better job of moving the ball than the Chiefs did. 100%. Like, no doubt about it, right? So, you look at that Cam Taylor-Britt interception. They had another interception in the game. They almost had, I think, 3 interceptions in the game. Trey Hendrickson dominated to the point where the Chiefs had to switch their left tackle. Their run defense was solid, much better. I think their linebacker positions played fantastic so far this year. Guys like DJ Turner have showed up in the back end. Their safeties are playing very well. Mahomes only threw the ball behind the line of scrimmage. Like, they did a great job. Kelsey was nowhere to be seen. We saw more Taylor Swift than Travis Kelsey. So the defense, great stuff. I feel like if the offense has T. Higgins, they maybe blow the Chiefs out. I think Burton needs to play more. I think Chase Brown needs to play more. This team needs more speed to help Burrow out. They're too tight end focused, in my opinion, right now. Zach Moss is just not it for me. The O-line played better, in my opinion. They did give up some crucial sacks. I didn't think Burrow played perfect. I think he can continue to play better, but this is a guy that's a notorious slow starter coming off of a season where he was injured, didn't play at the end of the year. It's been a while since he's played. So I think he looked better in week 2 than he did in week 1. He looked more like Joe Burrow. Jamar Chase has got to stop being a drama queen. Mike Gesicki had a great game. Honestly, if the defense plays like that every week, this team could be the team that we expected, which is a really good AFC team. But their offense needs to get healthy, and their offense needs to, I think, change some players out of the lineup, feature Burton more, feature Brown more, and just continue to build on the momentum that we saw from this game. So at number 8, yes, they're 0-2, but I believe in the Bengals. I think it's going to start this week on Monday night against the Commanders. At number 7, the New Orleans Saints, who have been the most impressive offense in football so far against the Carolina Panthers and the Dallas Cowboys. Their running game, their ability to work, play action, deep crossers, explosive plays has been fantastic. Rashid Shaheed is becoming a really good football player. Alvin Kamara looks like he entered a time machine, and so does Derek Carr. And they've been rejuvenated by the Kubiak scheme, which is getting a lot of credit, as it should. But I also feel like the Saints have been playing in perfect game scripts against the perfect opponents. They played Carolina, the worst team by far in the NFL. Bryce Young's not even a CFL quarterback. And then in week 2, they played the Cowboys in the perfect scenario where they were able to get a lead, and credit them for that. And then they just continued to build on that. But what's been really impressive is their drive chart to start games. I mean, like 6 touchdowns in a row, I think, in like both games or something ludicrous like that. Chris Olave hasn't even really been like a super juggernaut out there, but they're finding ways to run the ball in the zone scheme, feature that, and really attack coverages down the field with particular diced up, schemed up, calculated shots. And that's what I really like what we're seeing here. It's very Raiders, John Gruden, Derek Carr. That's really the vibe I'm getting right now. And Alvin Kamara is his new Josh Jacobs. And to me, the defense we always knew is good, just continues to play at that level. They are a very veteran-led team, though, so you do wonder how this, goes. If teams start to figure them out a little bit more, do they fall off towards the end of the season? Are they just a good story, or are they a legitimate team? To me, I'm sort of compelled to say they're a playoff team. I don't know if they're the best team in their division. Maybe they are. But I do feel pretty good that they're a playoff team. I'm just kind of like not sure if they're going to be one of those teams that starts really hot but then kind of falls flat. That might be the way that the season goes for them. But we'll continue to see this team. This week, they play a really tough test. They play the Eagles. So it's going to be a good game. We'll continue to see them against teams that we think are good. At number 6, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. The Bucs are a weird one to rank, in my opinion, because they're very, very, very injured right now, especially on defense. Like, their right tackle's hurt, but Vita Vea got hurt. He has an MCL sprain. Kalijah Cansey's hurt. Maybe he comes back soon. Logan Hall, I think's hurt. Antoine Winfield's hurt. They've got corners injured. So they've got a lot of injuries on defense, which almost leads me to believe that a upset is coming. Like, potentially they could get upset by a team they shouldn't lose to because of those injuries. But I love the way Baker's playing. I love the way that Chris Godwin's playing. I think that their run game, they played a tough test in the Lions. It looked better in week 1, not great in week 2. Their O-line, solid, not fantastic. I thought they got lucky against the Lions, to be honest. They got outplayed. The Lions moved the ball really well on them, and they controlled the game, but they couldn't score in the red zone. And you got to give Todd Bowles credit for, kind of pulling a Flores to a certain degree against the Niners, where it's like, we know we can't really stop you, but we're going to, confuse you. We're going to make life difficult. We're going to be good in the red zone. We're going to get a couple stops here that changes the game, and our offense is going to make enough plays to win. And Mike Evans really didn't even have a good game, but I thought that Chris Godwin carried, and the defense, great in the red zone. I think the lines were 1 for 6. And yeah, they made enough plays on Jared Goff. They confused him enough. They got to him enough. They got enough turnovers there. So at number 6, I have the Bucs. I think they're a legitimate playoff team. I'd have them in the top 4 in the NFC right now, but they've got to get healthy. So I have them at number 6. Entering the top 5, the Detroit Lions are still ahead of the Bucs, because I think if that exact game is played 10 times, the Lions probably win 7. That's kind of how I feel. They outproduce them by double the amount of yards, double the amount of first downs. The Lions probably should have won if they're a little bit better in the red zone. But what is becoming concerning for me for the Lions is their offense is not the same as last year right now. Goff is not the same player. Ben Johnson doesn't feel to be the same play caller. Amon-Ra had a really productive day, but he still doesn't even feel like the same guy. Laporta isn't producing the same. The only guy that's producing better is Jameson Williams. Jahmyr Gibbs is still Jahmyr Gibbs. Montgomery's still Montgomery. The run game is still decent. But I feel like they're getting away from their identity, which is running the ball and controlling the game. And they put too much of the game in the hands of Jared Goff. And they need to find a way to get Laporta the ball more. I just feel like their offense is really underwhelming right now, especially in situational football. And then defensively, I still feel they're average. I don't think they're great. I don't think they're bad. I think they're somewhere in between. Aiden Hutchinson is a dog. I will say they did a good job against Mike Evans compared to last year. But otherwise, run defense good, but their pass defense and stuff, overall just not amazing, just okay. So they've got a big matchup in Arizona. This is a game where if you truly are a great team, I think you beat a one-dimensional team in Arizona. But if you're not, you go on the road, you might lose. So we'll see what the Lions are. They've got a long season to go to really improve, and that was a tough loss, but they can definitely bounce back. At number 4, the Houston Texans. The Houston Texans, some people are saying they haven't been super impressive in week 1 or 2, and I mean, I agree, sort of. But I think they've been impressive in different areas in week 1 and 2. I thought in week 1, they ran the ball really, really well. Their offense overall played well. And in week 2, I thought their defense played really well, but their offense didn't play as well. And I think that was just matchup based. I think that they played a divisional opponent who they typically struggle against that offensive scheme. And then in week 2, they played a team that has a really good defense in Chicago. And if not for a Cam Akers fumble, they probably score what was expected from them, mid-20s. But because they didn't, it doesn't appear that they had a great day. So the Texans are getting the job done, but they're not looking overly impressive. But Stroud looks elite. There's no doubt about that. Nico Collins looks elite. All the elements seem to be there. Mixon still looks like Mixon. Diggs looks like a good little addition. Tank Dell needs to be better. The O-line could definitely be better, especially on 3rd and longs. But otherwise, the pass rush looks fantastic. The blitzing, the scheme on defense looked good. Stingley looked good. The safeties, I think, are playing well. To me, The linebackers are playing really well, Al-Shaair especially. But I feel like, yeah, like they're playing to the level of expectation, but they're not playing above that, which I think has people, a little bit like paused or like not willing to go all in yet. But I think this is just still a team that's still like grasping how good they can be. And I think it'll get there. I just think it's taking a little bit longer than people expected. I think they just expected them to come out and destroy teams. So at number 4, the Texans, they're 2-0. That's all you can say. At number 3, the Buffalo Bills are also 2-0. And the Bills have catapulted up my rankings after an extremely impressive win against the Dolphins. And man, like, I honestly hate that I was like halfway in and halfway out with the Bills this offseason, given how they've played so far. But honestly, there were questions about this team, and I think they've answered a majority of them. First of all, I think the most underrated area of this team so far has been how talented their D-line looks. I mean, Ed Oliver looks like he's playing peak. Greg Rousseau looks like he's playing the best ball of his career. Von Miller looks back. AJ Epenesa's playing good. Their linebackers, like Spector came in for Bernard and played well. Their secondary, we've been talking up their secondary. I've been talking up their secondary all offseason. They really haven't missed the safeties that they lost, in my opinion. I thought their secondary played fantastic against Miami. They didn't really allow anything. So you got to give them credit there. And then offensively, like they've pretty much been what we expected. They've ran the ball really well. They haven't really had to do a lot in the passing game against Miami, but they did against, the Cardinals, and they did. Allen looks like the best quarterback in the league for my money right now. And the O-line's good. Shakir is good, legit. Coleman, not so much. Curtis Samuel, I'd like to see more. I'd like to see a little bit more from Kincaid. But if Shakir and maybe Kincaid can get a little bit better, like this team could win the Super Bowl. I mean, I really think that if they can stay healthy, if they can get Matt Milano back, get Bernard back, like if they can get healthy, maybe they make a trade at the deadline for like somebody like, I don't know, Amari Cooper or something like that. That could really unlock this team. But I feel like this team is there. Like they're definitely, with Allen being the best quarterback in the league, the way that he's playing and, compared to the competition right now, I feel like they have as good of a chance as anybody. So at number 3, the Bills. At number 2, the San Francisco 49ers. The 49ers had a terrible game against the Vikings, and I can't really dispute that, and I'm not going to argue that. But again, guys, we don't base a power ranking off of only one game, and we definitely don't base it off of only one game when it's just a matchup problem for them. There was a reason a lot of people were backing the Vikings in that game on the spread, and, I was even, a little bit murky of that game, and it definitely came to the forefront. Like, Purdy did not play well. The offensive line did not play well. The defense, allowed too many big plays, especially that Justin Jefferson 97-yard touchdown or whatever it was. And it just feels like the offense doesn't do well enough against Brian Flores, and the defense didn't dominate to the degree that they needed to. But overall, you look at the game, it was fairly even from a statistical standpoint. It's just that the Niners didn't execute on 4th down. They didn't get 2 4th downs, and they turned it over. And that's basically what it came down to at the end of the day. The Vikings pulled the upset. But sometimes, again, styles make fights. That's a tough matchup for the Niners, seemingly. So any game they play feels like it would be very close. Now, I will say I'm not that worried. The only thing I'm worried about the Niners is injuries. That's what's worrying me, is McCaffrey, Debo got hurt. Like, those are the things that worry me about this team. It's not the quality of team. It's not the quality of play. They'll figure it out. It's early in the year. They'll get better. They'll improve. They'll tweak things, right? Like, I'm not worried about the talent. I'm not worried about the scheme. I'm not worried about any of that. I'm just worried about injuries. I don't want this team to have a 2020 all over again where you lose McCaffrey, you lose Debo, and then they just continue to go. Like, these guys continue to get hurt. So that's what we're hoping for, is just health for the Niners. And as long as they can remain relatively healthy, they will be in the mix come January. And if they're healthy in January, they will be as good as anybody. So that's why they're at number 2. And at number 1, we still got the Chiefs. Despite, in my opinion, a game that they probably should have lost, I was not impressed with their offense. Their run game has been lackluster, and now they lose Isaiah Pacheco. Their left tackle position, which we saw, we really talked about in the offseason, was the biggest concern on the roster, and they didn't really address it outside of the draft. It continues to be a huge issue, and that's going to be an issue against good pass rushes, especially without a run game, and if you're going to want to pass the ball a lot. And I think that scare of the left tackle has pushed Patrick Mahomes into being a mediocre quarterback to the degree where he is getting rid of the ball so fast that he's not really making an impact on the game. He's throwing the ball behind the line of scrimmage. Like, he threw, I don't even know how many passes beyond the line of scrimmage, 4 or 5? That's not elite quarterback play. In my mind, that is a system quarterback. So that's not what we expect from Patrick Mahomes. We need to see more there. I think Rice was relatively quiet in a game, that we expected him to play well. Kelsey has been washed this year so far. Maybe he's waiting for something. Worthy has just been kind of like a trickster with no other element, and maybe that's all he is, but I'd like to see more from the receiver position. The offense has just not been any better than what we thought it might. We thought it would be elite this year. It hasn't gotten there yet. Maybe it will down the stretch. We'll see. It's Andy Reid. It's Patrick Mahomes. We will wait, but they're still 2-0. So you give them that credit. I think the defense has played to its level of expectation. I think the defense has played well enough. Chris Jones has played well enough. George Karlaftis has played well enough. Their linebackers are playing well. Their corners are playing well. McDuffie's playing to expectation. It's that the offense is not good right now. So yeah, that's my problem. So, but they're number 1 because they're the Chiefs. They're the reigning champs. I moved them up because the Niners lost. I moved the Niners to 2. And like I said, depending on how these two teams are playing, they'll probably be 1 or 2 the whole year. And the Niners were more dominant in week 1. So I put the Niners 1. And then the Niners lost to the Vikings in a tough matchup. They go to 2. The Chiefs go to 1, despite probably should have losing. I probably would have had the Chiefs. I don't know who I would have had 1. Maybe Buffalo if the Chiefs lost to the Bengals. So it's a weird world we live in. But nonetheless, I have the Chiefs at number 1. And those are my power rankings for week number 3. I hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, Gronk, spike the like button. Don't forget to subscribe. It's Mitch. Deuces.